This is The Hidden Life of Trees by Peter Wolbe. We're in chapter 18, The Forest as Water Pump. How does water get to the forest anyway? Or, to take one step further back, how does water reach land at all? It seems like such a simple question, but the answer turns out to be rather complicated. For one of the essential characteristics of land is that it is higher than water. Gravity causes water to flow down to the lowest point, which should cause the continents to dry out. The only reason this doesn't happen is thanks to supplies of water constantly dropped off by clouds, which form over the oceans and are blown over land by the wind. However, this mechanism only functions within a few hundred miles of the coast. The further inland you go, the drier it is, because the clouds get rained out and disappear. When you get about 400 miles from the coast, it is so dry that the first deserts appear. If we depended on just this mechanism for water, life would be possible only in a narrow band around the edge of continents. The interior of land masses would be arid and bleak, so thank goodness for trees. Of all the plants, trees have the largest surface area covered in leaves. For square yard of forest, 23 square yards of leaves and needles blanket the grounds. Part of every rainfall is intercepted in the canopy and immediately evaporates again. In addition, each summer, trees use up to 8,500 cubic yards of water per square mile, which they release into the air through transpiration. This water vapor creates new clouds that travel further inland to release their rain. As the cycle continues, water reaches even the most remote areas. This water pump works so well that the downpours in some large areas, such as the Amazon basin, are almost as heavy thousands of miles inland as they are on the coast. There are a few requirements for the pump to work. From the ocean to the furthest corner, there must be forest. And most importantly, the coastal forests are the foundations for this system. If they do not exist, the system falls apart. Scientists credit Anastasia Markareva from St. Petersburg in Russia for the discovery of these unbelievably important connections. They studied different forests around the world, and everywhere the results were the same. It didn't matter if they were studying a rainforest or the Serbian taiga. It was always the trees that were transferring life, giving moisture into landlocked interiors. Researchers also discovered that the whole process breaks down if coastal forests are cleared. It's a bit like if you were using an electric pump to distribute water and you pulled the intake pipe out of the pond. The fallout is already apparent in Brazil, where the Amazonian rainforest is steadily drying out. Central Europe is within the 400-mile zone and therefore close enough to the intake area. Thankfully, there are still forests here, even if they are greatly diminished. Coniferous forests in the northern hemisphere influence climate and manage water in other ways too. Conifers give off terpenes, substances originally intended as a defense against illness and pests. When these molecules get into the air, moisture condenses on them, creating clouds that were twice as thick as the clouds over non-forested areas. The possibility of rain increases, and in addition, about 5% of the sunlight is reflected away from the ground. Temperatures in the area fall, cool and moist, just how conifers like it. Given this reciprocal relationship between trees and weather, forest ecosystems probably play an important role in slowing down climate change. For ecosystems in Central Europe, regular rainfall is extremely important because water and forests share an almost unbreakable bond. Streams, ponds, even the forest itself, all these ecosystems depend on providing their inhabitants with as much stability as they can. A good example of an organism that doesn't like a lot of change is the freshwater snail. Depending on the species, it is often less than 0.08 inches long, and it loves cold water. They like it to be no more than 46 degrees Fahrenheit. And for some freshwater snails, the reason for this lies in their past. Their ancestors lived in the meltwater of drained-off glaciers covering a large part of Europe in the last ice age. Clean springs in the forest offer such conditions. The water comes out at a constantly cool temperature. For these springs are where groundwater bubbles to the surface. Groundwater is found deep underground, where it is insulated from outside air temperatures, and therefore it is as cold in summer as it is in winter. Given that we no longer have any glaciers, this is the ideal replacement habitat for today's freshwater snails. But that means the water has to bubble up year-round, and this is where the forest comes into play. The forest floor acts as a huge sponge that diligently collects all the rainfall. The trees make sure that the raindrops don't land heavily on the ground, but drip gently from their branches. The loosely packed soil absorbs all the water, so instead of the raindrops joining together to form small streams that rush away in the blink of an eye, they remain trapped in the soil. Once the soil is saturated and the reservoir for the trees is full, excess moisture is released slowly and over the course of many years, deeper and deeper into the layers below the surface. It can take decades before the moisture once again sees the light of day. Fluctuations between periods of drought and heavy rain become a thing of the past, and what remains is a constantly bubbling spring. Although it has to be said, it doesn't always bubble. Often it looks more like a swampy, squishy area, a dark patch on the forest floor, seeping toward the nearest little stream. If you take a closer look, and to do that, you must get down on your knees, you can make out the tiny rivulets that betray the existence of a spring. Now to find out whether this is indeed groundwater or just surface water left over from a heavy shower, reach for your thermometer. Less than 48 degrees Fahrenheit? Then it is indeed a spring. But what kind of a person carries a thermometer around all the time? Another option is to take a walk when there is a hard frost. Puddles in rainwater will be frozen, while water will still be seeping out of spring. This then is where the freshwater snails call home. And here, they enjoy their preferred temperature year-round. And it is not only the forest floor that makes this possible. In the summer, a microhabitat like this could warm up quickly and overheat the snails, but the leafy canopy throws shadows that block out most of the sun. The forest offers a similar and even more important service to streams. The water in a stream is susceptible to greater temperature variations than spring water, which is continuously replaced with cool groundwater. These streams contain animals, such as salamander larvae and tadpoles, which are just waiting for their life outside the stream to begin. Like the freshwater snails, they need the water to remain cool so that oxygen doesn't escape. and if the water freezes solid, the baby salamanders will die. It is a good thing deciduous forests just happen to solve this problem. In winter, when there is very little warmth in the sun, bare branches allow a lot of warmth to penetrate. The movement of water over the uneven bottom always protects the stream from suddenly freezing. When the sun climbs higher in the sky in late spring and the air is noticeably warmer, the trees unfurl the leaves, closing the blinds and shading the running water. Then, in the fall, when temperatures drop once again, the sky reopens above the stream when the trees drop all their leaves. It's tougher for the streams to flow under coniferous trees. It's bitterly cold here in the winter, and sometimes the water freezes solid because it warms up only gradually in spring. This habitat is just not an option for many organisms, but pitch dark streams like this are rarely found in nature because spruce don't like having wet feet and therefore usually keep their distance. It's most often plantations that cause this conflict between coniferous forests and the denizens of streams. The importance of trees for streams continues even after death. When a dead beech falls across a stream bed, it lies there for decades. It acts like a small dam and creates tiny pockets of calm water where species that can't tolerate strong currents can hang out. The nondescript larvae of the fire salamander are just such creatures. They look like small newts, except they have feathery gills. They are firmly stippled with dark markings and have a yellow spot where their legs meet their bodies. In the cold water of the forest, they lie in wait for the tiny crawfish they love to eat. These little guys need crystal clear water, and the dead trees look after this as well. Mud and floating debris drop to the bottom of the tiny dam pools, and because stream flows are so low, it gives bacteria more time to break down harmful substances. And don't worry about the foam that sometimes forms in these pools after heavy rains. What looks like an environmental disaster is in fact the result of humic acids that tiny waterfalls have mixed with air until they turn into froth. These acids come from the decomposition of leaves and dead wood and are extremely beneficial for the ecosystem. When it comes to the creation of small pools, forests in Central Europe have become less dependent on dead trees falling down. They are increasingly getting help from an animal that recently made a comeback after being nearly eradicated. This animal is the beaver. I have my doubts whether the trees are really happy about this, for this rodent, which can weigh more than 60 pounds, is the lumberjack of the animal world. And it takes a beaver one night to bring down a 3 to 4 inch thick tree. Larger trees are felled over the course of multiple work shifts. What the beaver is after are twigs and small branches, which it uses for food. It stockpiles enormous quantities and is large to last the winter. And as the years pass, the lodge grows by many yards. The branches also camouflage the entrances to the tunnels that lead into the lodge. As an added security feature, the beaver builds these entrances underwater so that predators can't get in. And the rest of the living space is above water and therefore dry. Because water levels can fluctuate wildly with the seasons, many beavers also build dams, blocking streams and turning them into large ponds. Beaver ponds slow the flow of water from the forest, and extensive wetlands form in the areas around the dams. Alders and willows like to grow here. Beeches which cannot stand having wet feet die off. But the upstart of trees in the feeding zone around the lodge don't get to grow old, for they are in the beaver's living larder Although beavers damage the forest around them, they exert a positive influence overall by regulating water supplies. And while they're at it, they provide habitat for species adapted to large areas of standing water. So as we close this chapter, let's return once again to the source of water in the forest, rain. Rain can put you in the most wonderful mood while you are out walking. But if you're not wearing the right clothes, it can be unpleasant. If you live in Europe, mature deciduous trees offer a very special service to help you. A short-term weather forecast brought to you by chaffinches. These rust-red birds with the gray heads normally sing a song whose rhythm ornithologists like to describe as chip chip chip, chewy chewy chew. But you'll hear that song only on a fine day. If it looks like rain, the song changes to a loud run, 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 run. That's the end of chapter 18. Next time we'll be in chapter 19. Yours or mine?